The use of a ghost gun by Luigi Mangione to assassinate Brian Thompson underscores the need for a complete and comprehensive prohibition of ghost guns here in New York State. Ghost guns are a threat to public safety and a thorn on the side of law enforcement. Ghost gun violence has become the easiest crime to commit, but also the hardest crime to solve. The trouble with ghost guns are twofold. First, there are no serial numbers. The ghost guns have no serial numbers, and the acquisition of ghost guns is subject to no background checks. Without serial numbers, there is no means of tracking the gun, tracing the gun back to the manufacturer and owner. And without background checks, there is no means of prohibiting prohibited persons like minors, those with serious mental illness, and violent criminals from obtaining a firearm. Ghost guns have become the weapon of choice for those who would never pass a background check. In less than a decade, we have seen the explosion of ghost guns onto the streets of New York and into the hands of dangerous people like Luigi Mangione. From 2016 to 2021, the number of ghost guns recovered in crime scenes nationwide rose from 2,000 to 20,000, a 1,000% surge. And from 2020 to 2024, according to the NYPD, the number of ghost guns recovered at crime scenes here in New York City has risen by 154%. There are two loopholes in state law. First, state law prohibits the sale, transfer, and possession of ghost guns, but it fails to criminalize the manufacturing and 3D printing of ghost guns. Second, state law prohibits the manufacturing of assault rifles and high-capacity magazines and machine guns, but the prohibition fails to include ghost guns. And so I am calling upon Governor Kathy Hochul to include in her executive budget proposal legislation that would close the ghost gun manufacturing loophole in state law. New Yorkers live in a dangerous world when more and more people are carrying guns, more and more people are using guns, and more people are manufacturing guns in their home to an extent that we've never seen before. Anyone, anywhere, can purchase a ghost gun kit online and assemble gun components into a fully functioning firearm. Anyone, anywhere, can purchase a 3D printer for a few $100s and then print a gun in the comfort of their own home. 3D printers have the deadly and destructive power to turn every New Yorker into a gun manufacturer and every New York home into a gun factory. The proliferation of ghost guns and the proliferation of 3D printers that create them is creating an unprecedented crisis in public safety. We in New York continue to be haunted by the ghost of 3D printed guns. We must do everything that we can to keep New Yorkers safe. There should be no loophole open, and there should be no stone left unturned in the fight against gun violence. I just want to comment just generally on the assassination. You know, every elected official should categorically condemn the cold-blooded assassination of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. There should be no conditional language, no if, no but. There should be nothing resembling a rationalization of political violence. If elected officials are suggesting to the world that violence against a CEO might be understandable and even justifiable, then what is to stop others from applying that same standard to us? Normalizing violence opens a dangerous door that should remain closed. Even the barest acceptance of political violence as a means of resolving political differences will be the undoing of America as we know it. Political differences must only be resolved by politics, which is the resolution of conflict by means other than violence. For liberal democracy to survive, nonviolence must be a non-negotiable and violence a non-starter. And then I want to comment separately on something else. It's well known that the system here in New York is broken, and Governor Kathy Hochul cannot fix it. The governor is expected to veto a bill that would bring greater transparency to emergency contracting. The likely veto comes after the governor's decision to exempt the award of a $9 billion contract from independent review by the comptroller. There is no reason to oppose transparency unless there is something to hide. Good government dies in the darkness of Albany. So with that said, I'm happy to take whatever questions you have.
That you're calling for. How feasible is it to enforce them? As you say, people can make these things in the privacy of their homes.
Yeah.
The component, the 3D printer is perfectly legal. How effective would such a law be?
Look, legislating is the domain of probability rather than certainty, right? The more we regulate ghost guns, the more we reduce the risk of ghost gun violence in states like New York and elsewhere in the country. So my view is that the problem is so overwhelming that we have to throw the kitchen sink. We have to use every tool at our disposal to combat the spread of ghost guns, which has spun out of control.
If I can follow up, you're a member of the federal government. Should this be done on the federal level?
Well, keep in mind that President Biden actually enacted a rule that expands the Firearms Control Act of 1968, the Gun Control Act of 1968, to include ghost guns. But that rule is facing a challenge in the Supreme Court. So it's more important than ever that New York State rise to the occasion and regulate ghost guns to the greatest extent possible. Because if the Supreme Court strikes down the federal rule, we're going to need even more action from the states.
Some of these parts you have to get a hold of some of these parts,
Yeah.
right? They have to travel through the mail or some shipment agency. Is that not federally regulated, these parts?
Yeah, so the rule, historically, before the federal rule, you could purchase gun components online and assemble them into fully functioning firearms, and those components would have no serial number. The lower frames would have no serial number. The president's rule requires those frames to have a serial number. So it has been addressed at the federal level, but again, the rule is facing an aggressive legal challenge that has risen to the Supreme Court. And if that rule is struck down by the Supreme Court, we're going to need the states to fill that void.
Forgive me for not knowing, because
Yeah.
I've never tried this. You can't print the whole gun, you need component parts, and then you print them. Explain to me what you need mail ordered and what you can do with a printer.
My understanding is you purchased a ghost gun kit online, and then you assemble the components into a working firearm using 3D printer. And 3D printing has the capacity not only to create ghost guns, but the US military has shown that you could use it to create grenades and bombs. And so I worry that the ability to create weapons in one's home is only going to spread. Like, the cost of 3D printing is falling, and the quality, the capabilities of those 3D printers is rising, which can mean more weapons, more guns, not fewer.
To clarify, the kit, when you get the kit, is it enough to print everything, or the kit contains things that you need as well?
The kit, you would need blueprints, but I'm no expert on 3D printing, but we know that 3D printing, has enabled people to do something that's never been done before, which is the average person has the capacity to create a gun. Like, that is a new challenge for law enforcement. So these guns can easily be created. These guns have no serial number, making them untraceable, no background check. That's why ghost guns have a disproportionately destructive impact and deadly impact on young people, because young people can easily obtain these ghost guns. And as many of you know, gun violence has become the leading cause of death of young people in America.
In the case of Mangione,
Yeah.
Mangione,
Yeah.
however you pronounce it, there's no evidence, right, that he produced, that he manufactured it in New York State.
All we know is that he used a ghost gun that was likely made via a 3D printer, And that's the extent of what's been reported. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Thank
thank you,
you.
sir.